The letter came on a Tuesday. Not the kind you look forward to, not a birthday card, not a note from a grandchild. This one was from a bank I'd never borrowed from in my 67 years on this earth. It said my house. The house Bernard and I paid off the last installment on in 2003. The house where I raised my children. The house with the cracked tile in the second bathroom I kept meaning to fix. Was 31 days from foreclosure. I read it 3 times standing in the driveway in my house slippers. Then I went inside, put the kettle on, and sat down at the kitchen table the way I've done every morning for 40 years. The difference was that this time my hands were shaking. The loan had been taken out 8 months ago. A home equity line of credit, the letter said, in the amount of $42,000. Signed by Corinne Aldrich, that's me, and authorized by her power of attorney, Glenna Marie Aldrich Fowler. My daughter. I need to back up a little, because this didn't start with that letter. It started almost 2 years before, on a Sunday afternoon when my daughter came over for what I thought was just lunch. She brought a bottle of rosé I didn't ask for, and a folder of papers I wasn't expecting. Dwight, her husband, stayed in the car, which should have told me something. He never stays in the car. She sat across from me at this very table and folded her hands the way she used to when she was about to negotiate her curfew. She had that same look, patient, practiced. "Mom," she said, "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. You're doing so well, but what if something happened? You're here alone. What if you had a health scare and couldn't make decisions? Wouldn't it be better to have someone you trust with access, just in case?" I told her I was fine. I'd been fine since Bernard passed in 2016. I paid my own bills, drove myself to my own appointments, managed my own accounts. She pushed the folder toward me. "It's just a power of attorney. Standard. It doesn't change anything. It just means if you ever need me, I can step in. Think of it as a safety net." I looked at the folder. I looked at her. She looked back at me with her father's eyes, warm, steady, the kind of eyes that make you want to believe what someone is telling you. I signed that afternoon. For 6 months, nothing seemed different. She called more often, which I liked. She brought the grandchildren twice. Emma, her oldest, 14 at the time, sat with me on the porch and asked me to teach her how to make Bernard's corn chowder. We spent 3 hours in the kitchen together, and I thought, this is what family is supposed to feel like. I didn't know that while Emma and I were measuring out the cream, her mother had already begun making calls. I found out later, much later, from the bank's own records, that my daughter had initiated the home equity application 2 weeks after I signed the POA. She listed the loan purpose as home improvement. There were no improvements. The money went to an account I'd never seen. I didn't know any of this on the Tuesday the letter came. I just knew that my hands were shaking, and the kettle was screaming, and the word foreclosure was sitting on my kitchen table like a stone dropped from a great height. I called her before I called anyone else. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or some last strand of hope that the letter was wrong, that someone had made a terrible mistake, that my daughter was not the person this document implied she was. She answered on the second ring. "Mom, what's up?" Her voice was cheerful. She was in a car. I could hear road noise, something faint on the radio. "I got a letter," I said, "from Harwich Lending Group, about my house." A pause, just half a second too long. "Oh," she said, that one word, and I felt something in my chest go very quiet. "Glenna," I said, "what did you do?" She exhaled. That particular exhale, I've heard it my whole life. She used it the time she dented my car at 17 and waited 2 days to tell me. When she borrowed money from her brother and spent 3 years pretending she'd forgotten. When she got caught in the small lies that accumulated over decades, like dust in the corners of a house you stopped cleaning. "I was going to tell you," she said. "It was just, things got complicated. Dwight's business had some cash flow problems. The loan was supposed to be temporary. I was going to pay it back before you ever needed to know." "Pay back," I repeated. "You took out a loan against my house, Glenna. My house." "Mom, calm down. You still have the house. Nothing's happened to the house." "There's a foreclosure notice on my kitchen table." Silence. "How many payments have you missed?" I asked. 3, she said quietly, "maybe 4. I set the phone down on the table for a moment. Not because I didn't have anything to say. Because I had too much, and none of it was going to help either of us right now. I picked it back up. I want this fixed, I said. I want the loan paid, I want my name cleared, and I want your access to my accounts revoked. All of it. Mom, you can't just. I'm going to the bank tomorrow morning, I said. You can either meet me there and help fix this, or you can stay home. Either way, I'm going. She didn't answer. I hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark listening to the house, the creak of the pipes, the way the oak tree scrapes the gutter when the wind comes up. And I thought about every moment I should have asked more questions. When she'd called 3 years ago, asking if I could spot her $2,000 for a plumbing emergency. When her husband's landscaping business seemed to be doing well one month and desperate the next. When she stopped bringing the grandchildren and started sending photos instead. When Emma, during one of our phone calls, went quiet for a moment and said, "Dad and Mom fight about money a lot." Children notice things. They always do. I thought about Bernard. He trusted her too. Our firstborn, our loud, laughing girl who'd been fearless since the day she learned to walk. He would have been heartbroken by this, but he also would have said what he always said when he had to do something hard. Just do the next right thing, Corinne. Don't wait for it to feel easy. At 6 in the morning, I got up, pressed my gray slacks, and put on the cream blouse. Bernard always said made me look like I meant business. I meant business. The woman who helped me at the bank was thorough and careful. She laid the documents out flat and went through them one by one. The home equity loan had been originated at Harwich, the foreclosure letter institution, using the POA. The loan was real. The debt was real. The missed payments were real. You have options, she said carefully, but I want to be honest with you. The loan itself is legally valid. Your signature appears on the POA, and the POA was used within its authorized scope. To challenge the loan, you'd need to prove the POA was obtained under false pretenses. That's a legal argument, not a banking one. So I need a lawyer, I said. Yes, ma'am. And I'd suggest contacting Adult Protective Services. What you're describing, a family member using a POA to take financial actions without the principal's knowledge or consent, that meets the definition of financial elder abuse under most state statutes. Financial elder abuse. I'd heard that phrase on the news. I'd never imagined sitting in a bank chair and hearing it applied to my own life. All right, I said. Let's start with what you can do. I want every account she has access to change to my name only today. She nodded. We can do that right now. I drove home and called my son. My son Philip lives in Colorado. He's an electrician. Steady, quiet, the kind of man who fixes things with his hands and doesn't speak until he's thought it through. He and his sister were never particularly close, which had always made me a little sad. Now I was grateful for it. He picked up on the first ring. Mom, everything okay? No, I said. It's not. I need to tell you something. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a long pause, the kind where I could almost hear him thinking. I'm coming, he said. You don't have to. I'll be there Thursday. That was all. He didn't suggest I might have misunderstood. He didn't ask me to consider his sister's perspective before I did anything drastic. He just said he was coming, and I believed him, and something in my chest loosened that I hadn't realized was pulled so tight. The attorney's office was on the second floor of a brick building, downtown, above a dry cleaner's, that had been there since I was a girl. Mr. Greer was older than I expected, late 70s, with the careful movements of someone who had learned not to rush. He shook my hand with both of his and waited for me to sit before he did. I laid everything on his desk, the foreclosure notice, the POA document, the original mortgage payoff statement from 2003. 40 years of bank records I'd kept in a fireproof lockbox in my closet, the way Bernard taught me. He read slowly, occasionally making a note in the margin of a legal pad. When he finished, he took his glasses off. Mrs. Aldrich, he said, the road to recovering that loan money is long and uncertain. The POA was properly executed. Your daughter acted within its technical authority. A court could find that she abused that authority, and I believe we could make a strong argument, but these cases are costly and they take time. I'm not doing this for the money, I said. I'm doing this to make sure she can never do it again. He nodded slowly. Then let's talk about what we can accomplish quickly. Revoking the POA, updating your will, establishing a trust. Who do you want to protect? I thought about Emma standing at my kitchen counter with flour on her nose, asking careful questions about her grandfather's recipe. My granddaughter, I said. She's 15. Then, let's make sure she's taken care of. We worked for 2 hours. I signed more papers that afternoon than I had in years. But these were mine, every signature given freely, to people I chose. Philip arrived Thursday evening. He didn't say much when he came in, just hugged me longer than usual, looked around the house like he was making sure it was still standing, and went to hang up his coat. She called me, he said from the hallway. I figured she would. She said you were overreacting, that it was a misunderstanding. He came back into the kitchen and sat down. I told her I'd heard your side and that sounded about right. We drank coffee and talked until almost midnight. He was methodical, like his father. He asked whether I'd filed with Adult Protective Services. I told him I'd already made the call. He asked whether Dwight had known. I said I suspected so, but couldn't prove it yet. Your sister's going to lose her house, I said after a while. I found out this afternoon. They're behind on their own mortgage, too. This wasn't just about saving the business. They were drowning. He looked at me carefully. Does that change anything for you? I thought about it honestly. No, I said. It explains things. It doesn't excuse them. He nodded once. Good enough. My daughter came to the house on a Saturday, 2 weeks after all of it started. She didn't call first. She knocked, at least. She'd learned that much. I opened the door and she looked smaller than I remembered. Her eyes were red at the edges, and she was holding her car keys in both hands the way Emma used to hold her stuffed rabbit when she was frightened. Can I come in? She asked. You can stand here, I said. Say what you came to say. She flinched. I didn't move. Mom, I know what I did was wrong. I knew it when I did it. She stopped, started again. Dwight's business was failing. We were so behind. I thought if I could just get through the rough part, I'd pay it back before you ever needed to know, and everything would be fine. But you knew, I said. You knew I didn't know. That was the whole plan. She looked down at her keys. Yes. You came to my house. You held my hand and told me this was a safety net, and then you used that safety net to catch yourself and left me standing over a hole. Her lips pressed together. I'm sorry. I know you are, I said. Sorry is the part you feel when you get caught. I'm more interested in what you understood before you called that lending company and told them to use my house as collateral. She started to cry, not dramatically, just the quiet kind, tears tracking straight down her face. I didn't move toward her. I understood that I was desperate, she said, and that you would always help me. You always helped me. There it was, that sentence. I knew you loved me, so I used it. I have always helped you, I said. I paid your first month's rent when you were 23. I co-signed your car. I watched your children for 3 years when childcare got expensive. I never once kept a list because I didn't think I needed to. That was my mistake. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. What happens now? Now you go home, I said. You talk to a housing counselor about your situation, because that's your situation to handle. And if you want a relationship with me going forward, you build it the way you should have from the beginning. By being honest, by asking instead of taking, by treating me like a person instead of a resource. She nodded, small and tight. And Emma? She asked quietly. Emma is always welcome here, I said. That's between her and me. She left without another word. I watched her car pull out of the driveway, then closed the door and stood in my hallway for a long moment. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel sad. I felt the particular quiet of a room after a storm has passed. Not peaceful exactly, but still, rearranged. Emma called that Sunday. She'd gotten my number from my son. Grandma, she said, I don't know everything that happened, but Mom's been crying for 3 days, and I heard her say your name. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm okay, sweetheart. Complicated, but okay. I'm sorry if she did something bad, Emma said quietly. I know she does things that aren't right sometimes. She was really scared about money for a long time. I know, baby. Does that make it okay? I thought about how to answer that honestly. No, I said. Being scared explains things. It doesn't make them okay, but it means we can still try to understand even when we can't forgive right away. She was quiet for a moment. Are we still going to do the garden this spring? I looked out the kitchen window at the side yard. The patch I'd been meaning to turn over for years. The one Bernard always said would make a good raised bed. Yes, I said, we are. The APS caseworker came the following Wednesday. She was thorough and asked her questions without judgment. I gave her everything: the POA, the loan records, the bank's notes. She told me what I already suspected. This met the legal threshold for financial elder abuse under our state's statutes. She would file a formal report. Mr. Greer called that same afternoon. The trust is finalized. Your granddaughter's name is on it. There's a protected portion of your estate that can't be touched without a court order, and your will is updated. What about my son? I asked. Equal shares between him and your granddaughter per your instruction. Good, I said. That's right. He paused. Your daughter may try to contest it. I want you to be prepared. Let her, I said. I've been prepared for harder things. He was quiet for a moment, then said something I didn't expect. Mrs. Aldrich, I've been doing this 40 years. Most people in your situation come in here angry or destroyed. You came in with your documents in order and a clear sense of what you wanted. That's rarer than you'd think. I thought about Bernard, about all those years keeping the household books, tracking every receipt, writing every payment in the little green ledger I still keep in the second drawer. He'd taught me that, or maybe we'd taught each other. My husband always said a clear head is worth more than a loud voice, I said. Mr. Greer laughed, real and short. He was right. Philip stayed 10 days. We painted the back bedroom together, the one that's been dingy beige since 1998. He fixed the cracked tile in the second bathroom. He made breakfast every morning without being asked and did the dishes without comment. On his last night, we sat on the porch after dinner. The spring air was cool but soft. You going to be all right here alone? He asked. I've been alone for 8 years, I said. I manage. You know what I mean. I did. I'm better than I was before all this started, I said. I know that sounds strange. But I'd been going along assuming things were fine, assuming she meant well, assuming that people who smiled at me were the people they showed me. And now? Now I check, I said simply. He reached over and squeezed my hand once. The way his father used to when he didn't have the right words, but wanted me to know he was there. Call me if anything happens, he said. You'll be the first I call, I said, after the bank and the lawyer. He laughed. I hadn't heard him laugh in a while. It sounded like his father. Emma came in April, just like she'd promised. She arrived with gardening gloves 2 sizes too big and a packet of tomato seeds she'd picked out herself. We marked out the raised bed together. Bernard's patch, finally turned over, finally ready. She worked quietly beside me, pressing seeds into the soft earth with careful fingers. After a while, she said, without looking up, Mom and Dad lost the house. I heard, I said. We're staying with Aunt Christine now. It's crowded. She smoothed the soil with the flat of her hand. I'm not mad at you, Grandma. I want you to know that. Whatever happened, I know you didn't do anything wrong. I set down my trowel and looked at her. This girl with her grandfather's steady hands and her own particular kind of quiet courage. I know you know that, I said, but it matters that you said it. She looked up. The trust thing, my uncle told me a little bit. You didn't have to do that. No, I agreed. I didn't have to. She looked back at the seeds. Thank you. We finished the row in comfortable silence. The afternoon light came through the oak tree in long, pale strips. When we went inside to wash up, I caught myself thinking, this is what endures, not the accounts, not the court filings, not the $42,000. This, a girl with muddy gloves at my kitchen sink, asking careful questions. I wrote my daughter one letter that didn't go through Mr. Greer. It wasn't long. I told her I didn't hate her, that I understood desperation better than she might think, that I'd had desperate years too, years when the math didn't work and I'd cried over the checkbook after the children were asleep. I told her the difference between her desperation and mine was that I never once reached into someone else's life and took what I needed without asking. I told her the door between us was not locked permanently, but it was closed for now, and she would have to knock, and knocking would mean honesty about the money, about the marriage, about all the things she'd been smoothing over with smiles and rosé, and folders of paper slid across tables while her husband waited in the car. I sealed the envelope and mailed it without expecting a response. She didn't send one, not yet. Maybe not ever. And that was something I was learning to hold without breaking. There's something I want to say if you've stayed with me this long, because I know some of you aren't here just for the story. You're here because something in it sounded familiar. Maybe it was a child who borrowed without asking. Maybe it was someone who had access to one thing and reached for another. Maybe it was just the slow, quiet realization that the people who said we'll take care of you had rearranged the word care into something that benefited them. You are not foolish, not naive, not too old to understand what was done to you. We are told, especially women, especially older women, that love means giving without limits, that asking questions is the same as not trusting, that the kindest thing we can do is make it easy for the people we love to help themselves to us. But love without limits isn't love. It's an open account with no fraud protection. I lost money. I lost time. I lost the version of my daughter I'd invented in my mind, the one who meant what she said and said what she meant. That loss is real and I carry it. But I didn't lose my house. I didn't lose my mind. I didn't lose the girl who planted tomatoes with me in April and said thank you without being prompted. And I didn't lose myself. That turned out to be the part that mattered most. If you're sitting somewhere right now with a letter on your table, or a knot in your stomach, or a sentence someone said to you that didn't quite add up, trust that knot. Pick up the phone. Call the bank. Call a lawyer. Call Adult Protective Services. Call the child who lives far away but picks up on the first ring. Don't wait to be certain. Don't wait to feel ready. The house is still standing. The seeds are in the ground. And I am still here.